Hi, my name is Mary Wong, and I'm a registered traditional Chinese medicine practitioner and acupuncturist in downtown Toronto. I'm the founder of Alive Holistic Health Clinic and author of Pathways to Pregnancy, which is right here. And tonight, I am so excited, so thrilled to be able to interview one of my loves. Her name is Dr. Fiona McCulloch. She is a naturopathic doctor and owner of and founder of White Lotus Integrative Medicine, an integrative women's health clinic in Toronto, which is where I reside, by the way. And another reason why I love Fiona is because we didn't know it, but we grew up in the same neighborhood. I love that. Anyway, she's the author of the book, 8 Steps to Reverse Your PCOS. And you'll see that I've actually been reading a lot because it's dog-eared and a little messed up, but you still get the gist of it. That just means how great this book is. So I'm really excited to share it with you all. And just to say a little bit more about her, she's done, this is a comprehensive book on polycystic ovarian syndrome. She's involved in research on PCOS, so she's like a crazy expert on this. She's a medical advisor, developer of the nutrition program for the groundbreaking MyAva open source health PCOS precision medicine project to help women worldwide with PCOS access quality health care through technology. So I want to extend a warm welcome for Dr. Fiona. Thank you and welcome. Oh, you're breaking up.
Hello?
Are you there?
I am. I'm here. Can you see me or hear me?
We went on hyperspace. And actually, this is post number 59. And before we start, I have to apologize that my live post 58, which I really attempted to do, did not work out last week. And it was because I was in San Diego in a beautiful hotel called the Hilton. And they had really poor internet connection, so I could not make my interview possible. So what I want to share with you is that in 2 weeks' time, I'm going to get Natasha again to come on. And what's so great about it is that you'll have already watched Dr. Fiona here and talk about PCOS because this patient overcame her PCOS challenges and miraculously got pregnant. And so I want to cover her story. But first of all, let's chat with Dr. Fiona. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mary. It's amazing to be with you. And, we've been friends for a long time and we learned that we grew up together or in the same neighborhood and went to the same even junior public school, junior high and high school, which we learned as adults after we were interested in the same area. So I feel like it's fate that we became friends and it's so cool to talk to you now.
Exactly. And I want to bring up how we met. We met because we were both involved. We were part of the founding members of CEFP, which stands for Clinical Excellence for Fertility Professionals. And that is directly associated with our mentor, Dr. Randy Lewis, who is the author of The Infertility Cure. So it was really awesome that by faith we met. And I'm so thrilled to have you here, that you can share your expertise with us. So let's not waste any time. And the very first thing is, of course, not everybody knows what PCOS is. So let's talk about that. What is it? What are the main symptoms for those who, maybe potentially have it and doesn't even know? So
yeah. So it's the most common reproductive disorder in women, and it's basically much more than that. It's actually a hormonal disorder that affects a woman's whole body. For a long period of time, it's been thought of as more of a fertility condition, but it actually presents in a lot of different ways. So it affects a woman's metabolism. It can cause weight gain and difficulty losing weight. It can cause an excess of male hormones that cause male characteristics, such as facial hair growth on the chin. It can also cause male pattern hair loss right up here on the top of the head. So it causes a whole bunch of different hormonal issues for women. And even though it's called polycystic ovary syndrome, many women who have it don't even have cysts. So it's actually really just about all of these different hormonal imbalances in the body.
Yeah. I want to actually add in, so in your book, you do talk about self-care and self-esteem. So I would love for you to address that because, and I think we've had a conversation in the past about this too, how having acne and hair, how can actually impact a person, right? Can you address that a little bit?
Absolutely. So it definitely can affect self-esteem for women. A lot of the time, it causes a lot of very challenging skin problems. So including, like I mentioned, the acne that tends to be kind of intense and along the jawline, and it persists for a long time, often in going into the adult years, can cause hair growth on the face. And then the other thing can really affect self-esteem is that it's very difficult to lose weight, and it causes weight gain around the middle. So it does definitely affect self-esteem. And it's also associated with an increased incidence of depression and anxiety, in part related to the self-esteem issues caused by all of the problems it causes, but also because it really causes hormonal imbalance, and that really affects, just our mood and the way our brain functions as women.
Absolutely. So then, because your book is really about resetting the hormones, and it actually does say a proven program to reset your hormones, repair your metabolism, and restore your fertility. So I would love to have you address the very first thing about, what's the best diet for PCOS? Because, I've seen it, and I'm sure that's why you're saying it, that diet makes a big impact.
Yeah, absolutely. So, there's really no one perfect diet for PCOS. There's a lot of different diets that can work, but kind of across the board, what works quite well is any diet that's anti-inflammatory and keeps blood sugar regulated. So at our clinic, we use a diet that's really based on stabilizing the blood sugar using something called the food insulin demand. So we're choosing, a combination of proteins, healthy fats, lots of vegetables and fiber from non-starchy vegetables. And then, we vary the amount of carbohydrate depending on how insulin resistant a woman is, because the insulin resistance is one of the main factors in PCOS and what causes the ovaries to make excess testosterone. So any nutrition plan that's anti-inflammatory and that can address insulin resistance can often be successful for the condition.
Right, and I love it that you made your program a little different because you look at the insulin index versus the glycemic index. Can you speak to that as well?
Sure. So I think we all have heard about the glycemic index, and this has been there's been so much research on it. And it's really an amazing metric that we can use to understand about how much a food raises our blood sugar when we eat it. The limitations of the glycemic index are that it's really based around only carbohydrate foods, so it doesn't include proteins and fats. And there are foods actually that cause our insulin to go up that don't really cause our blood sugar to go up very much. And that's a very interesting thing because in PCOS, women are not diabetic. They're actually more likely to secrete high amounts of insulin. And diabetes is one of the risks that happens a lot later. So by knowing now that we understand this new metric called the insulin index, we can choose foods that keep our blood sugar stable, but also don't cause us to release a lot of insulin to process them. And that actually we found to make a really big difference.
Very exciting. Anyone that's interested, definitely pick up this book because of course it will show you, like it does have the charts in it too, right?
Yeah, absolutely, it does. It's got all the charts in it of all the different foods. And then it also talks about how to structure meals based on, for some women, they're really more on the lean side and they would be a little bit less insulin resistant. And women who are a bit on, the heavier or curvier side, they would be more insulin resistant. And so we have different kinds of structures of how to, add up proteins, healthy fats, vegetables, and amounts of carbohydrates per meal based on the level of insulin resistance. And there's also a quiz to help you learn about that too.
We love quizzes, don't we? Okay,
Yes, I love them.
All right. So the other thing that you speak about in the book is that PCOS actually changes, ebbs and flows. And so really tell us a bit about what happens, as a teenager to your productive years to menopausal years.
Okay, I love that you asked that question, Mary. You're always the type to ask the most awesome questions. So it's so important because this is a big reason why PCOS gets missed a lot of the time. Because a lot of, practitioners might expect PCOS to kind of look the same at all times, but it actually looks really different, not only just in different women, but in a teenager versus in a 40 or 50-year-old woman. So I have a lot of women as my patients who are, for example, 55 with PCOS, and they're past menopause and there's no periods, but they still have PCOS. So in a teenager, what you'll see is that there's often the irregular periods, and they tend to have more of the cysts on the ovaries. Now, most teenage girls go through a PCOS-like phase, which lasts like about a year, and then it resolves and they start to have more regular periods. And by 2 years, really most girls have regular periods. If that's not happening, something's, maybe going on there. And by regular, I mean, like under 32-day cycles pretty consistently. So then the androgens like testosterone, they tend to be very high in teenagers, and also in women in their 20s up till about, the mid-20s, there's a lot of androgens. So you might see, a lot of the acne, still more of the irregular cycles, and still the cysts on the ovaries. And as women get to be a little bit older, late 20s to mid-30s and late 30s, you'll start to see a lot of women's cycles start to become shorter. So they'll start to become, if they had like 45-day cycles, they might go to like 35. Some of them actually become like 28 or 30. And a lot of these androgen type symptoms look a bit better. But what you'll see is the insulin resistance parts start getting worse. And as women get older, a lot of those ovulatory symptoms look like they've gone away and the cysts go away. But then they start to have more of these kinds of metabolic problems like insulin resistance, high levels of insulin, just the first signs of things like high triglycerides or abnormal markers on the lipid panel. And that's kind of what you see more and more as women get older. Even though, say, a 45-year-old woman with PCOS would still have higher testosterone than a 45 woman without, it still might not be apparent at that age.
So then for women that are trying to conceive with PCOS, how does that affect them?
So for trying to conceive, so for some women, they actually don't have any problems trying to conceive at all who have PCOS. It definitely increases the likelihood that there would be a problem with trying to conceive. And mostly this results from the ovulation not being regular, or not ovulating very often at all in some cases. And then the other aspect of that is that we know that factors like insulin resistance and inflammation and all of that can affect egg quality, implantation. So there's a bunch of different ways that it can affect fertility.
And so just to piggyback that, and I know that you said it doesn't have to, right? So if you take care of it, and even, you certainly witnessed it, where people who have very irregular periods can actually get pregnant and not even know it, right, with PCOS, and have a successful, healthy pregnancy to term with a healthy baby.
Yeah.
And then the women that do have challenges, but really with PCOS, and certainly in your book, giving really great habits and strategies and lifestyle changes, it can impact your hormones and your menstrual cycle in a way that it can you can facilitate your fertility.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. And anything, when you're working with PCOS, anything that you do that improves the metabolism or inflammation, which is a huge part of it, it always affects and improves fertility. And you're so right. Like, in fact, a lot of the women who don't know they're pregnant for long periods of time have PCOS because they're used to not having periods. And then they're like, wait a minute, this has been 4 months and I feel a bit weird. and then they'll just take a test and find out they're pregnant. So that's not uncommon.
That's funny. Now that what brings to light is, you hear about these crazy stories, right? Women are like, oh, they're in their last month.
Yes.
And she thinks she has like digestive issue, and she actually has a baby in there.
Right.
All these cases are PCOS.
I gotta wonder, right? I think probably most of them are. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
So there is a reason for that. Yes.
So any of those that are actually having challenges and have PCOS, you've got to think of those other stories. They're not cycling, and they're actually getting pregnant. So just know that, whatever you do, you're doing the best you can. Sometimes you've done it all, and your cycles are getting better, and you're still not pregnant yet. So just imagine that the possibility is there. It's just timing. Sometimes you might be a little impatient, right?
Yes. And that's what I love about your book, Mary. There's just so much hope in there. And I believe that because I see it every day for women with PCOS, and also about, all the different conditions you talk about in your book. There's always a lot of hope there, even when things seem really hard, and just, all of a sudden things can just change.
Absolutely. And what I always say is that you are not diagnosed as it's not a prison sentence. And as you and I both know, you have a huge capacity to change and feel, and certainly there are tangible ways to do that. So in your book, and so what I do at Alive Holistic Health, we can acupuncture medicine, and see things improve that way. So there's lots of things that I do, and it's not just with regards to PCOS, and hence in my book, there are lots of things. Thank you for this.
Yeah, there's so many things that you can do. And today, like if for women with PCOS, the vast majority can get pregnant. So I find that it's actually pretty rare that someone with PCOS won't be able to conceive if they, get help and make those changes.
Yeah, absolutely. So really, that's a great takeaway. So thank you for that. But now we're kind of going backwards, because we also need to address that there are different kinds of PCOS. And I love the way you break it down so simply. Can you just share with us very briefly about the different types?
Yeah, okay, so there's definitely different types. And if you go to my website, drfionand.com, on the front of that page, there's a quiz. And the types of PCOS are actually, there's a lot of different types. There's actually 4 phenotypes that are, basically made up of the criteria that define PCOS, that cause a diagnosis. But there's also women who have, more inflammation, or they have more ovulatory problems, or they have more of adrenal androgen excess, which is almost a very specific type of PCOS. And so that quiz really allows women to break down, what type of PCOS they have and know what to focus on in order to improve it. And the type of PCOS that a woman has can actually change at different times in her life too. So it's not always the same, because it's really an evolving hormonal complex that follows us throughout our entire lifespan.
That's fantastic. And of course, again, if you want to check out what kind of PCOS you have, go through the quizzes, and find your type, or maybe not. So I don't have PCOS, and I found your book fascinating, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Of course, right? And certainly we do treat PCOS, but I think anyone can read this, anybody with hormones.
Yeah.
And really, as you know, as we age, we just tend to get information anyway. So I don't think it's just solely restricted to PCOS types of women.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if you want to learn just about insulin resistance, inflammation, how ovulation works, how to eat for insulin resistance or healthy metabolism, like all of those different things that, can affect women's health are really all, because those are all involved with PCOS. There's a big chapter on thyroid. So so all of that's in there. And I actually have had a lot of people without PCOS reading it and finding information in there interesting. So I think I'm happy to hear that. That's awesome.
Of course. Yeah. No, that's why I wanted to interview you. You have an amazing book, and I'm like, thrilled. And I tell everybody about you and your book. And so thank you for writing it. I think it's very helpful to stand for those who are PCOS.
Well, thank you, Mary. I do the same for you. You're one of the best acupuncturists in the world for fertility. So you are a superstar and one of the, the most experienced. You've been doing this for so long. So I think your book is awesome and full of hope, and I recommend it to all my patients who are trying to conceive.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, it's interesting. I just very recently had a patient come in and he said, I've read all the fertility books and then I saw yours at Shoppers Drug Mart and I thought, how come I didn't see this one? And when she picked it up, he said, Mary, it was the only book out of all of them that provided me hope. And I was floored. And I realized it's like, I think there's a lot of how-to books, and sometimes the how-to, there's a disconnect with how you be versus how you do, right?
Yeah.
Actually cause overwhelmed because there's just so many things to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think, in your book, I don't find it overwhelming. I think it is very helpful because there's tactical things that people can do that doesn't overwhelm. And so that's why I love your book as well. Boy, we're just
yeah.
Things together. I think we'll just cut it off. Any last words of wisdom for everyone out there?
Well, I mean, I think, knowing that 50% of women who have PCOS don't even know that they have it and are going through this with these mystery symptoms, having trouble losing weight, this acne that won't go away, hair falling out for no reason, can't get pregnant. I just think the more awareness that is going on, the better. It's one of the leading causes of cardiovascular disease. And right now in the US, they just went to Congress to start a resolution, and it's going through all the congressmen to create to cause September to be declared PCOS Awareness Month, because it's such a public health crisis affecting 1 in 10 women. So thinking of just, if you hear about it and you hear people with those symptoms, just let them know about it so that they can get some more information about it, because it can really change their life.
About 1 in 10 is huge.
Yeah.
I just want to ask the question then, because we're supposed to finish, but so 1 in 10, is that North America? Is that the United States? Is that internationally?
So that's actually internationally, but the reality is some countries have higher incidences. So for example, like India has there's a lot of women with PCOS there, and then other countries there's a bit of a lower incidence, but it's aggravated by any kind of intensive weight gain. So, in the US, in Western civilization and society, we're seeing a lot of PCOS, and it looks like it's increasing. It's just really hard to say if it's, our diet and also our environment that's turning these genes on and making it more noticeable.
Yeah, I certainly think that and I do believe that North America, especially in the United States, where 70% of people are overweight, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more people having PCOS. Even if, let's say, if they weren't obese, they had weight issues, perhaps it would not be like expressed as much, right?
Right. And then the thing is, like as teenagers, it's really, unless that information is given and more public health awareness is out there, teenagers really don't know about it, right? And they don't really necessarily know how to eat. And once insulin resistance sets in, it's a lot harder to get back out of that. And any woman with PCOS will know how hard it is to lose weight. Like it's harder when you have this than when you don't, because you're like a metabolic conserver that just holds on to every little bit of energy. And so that's why I think it's really important that people learn about it as young as possible so that they can, prevent as much as they can.
That's great. I'm just looking at, okay, these are just comments. I was just looking for any questions. Okay, so I think that's it. Thank you so much again for being a part of this. You are awesome. We love you. I'll speak for all of us.
Love you too. You're awesome.
You have a great night, and hope to have you back on another time. And So please check out more of the live posts. There's lots of awesome information on here. Check out your book, no, that's my book. I was going to say Pathways to Pregnancy. That's my book.
Yes, check that out too, though.
PCOS. And then, of course,
Mary.
check out my book here. We'll chat another time. I'd love to have you back, and we can talk about something else, or maybe specific related to diet. Whatever you want. Okay.
All right. We'll think of something, I'm sure.
And next week, please join me, and I'll be interviewing actually Dr. Zainab Miraz, and
she's awesome.
Naturopathic medicine doctor as well. So we're going to kind of piggyback off of the PCOS and do all of that. So awesome. And then the week after, I'll actually interview someone who did overcome PCOS. And her story was actually quite extreme, so I really love to be able to share that with you. So that would be next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So be here, be square, and love you. See you soon. Take care.